asking people today for what his favourite song might be. Because, you know, he famously doesn't have a favourite book, doesn't have a favourite poem, doesn't have a favourite film. So I don't know what favourite piece of music he would have. A couple have said, well, we've got loads of them coming in. Road to Nowhere by Talking Heads, says Daryl. How about Tragedy from Jim in the Netherlands? How about Hotel California from Bruce? You know, the list goes on and on. The man is just a sort of national mockery now, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. He doesn't dream either, I think he said in the same interview where he admitted he doesn't have a favourite book or anything like that. I mean, I know that we're living in a nightmare, but I think that's a bit on the nose even for him.
It really is.
Maybe my version of his favourite song would be a slight reworking of that great Smiths song, and in this case it would be This Charmless Man.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good one. But yeah, he really is. And we've got him now saying we might have to put taxes up in the autumn. He was asked about tax rises, right? And again, he's come up with a new phrase here, because, you know, we've been assailed with this working people thing that he's been saying for ages. He's now come up with a new one. See if he can spot it right at the end.
In the autumn, we'll get the full forecasts and obviously set out our budget. The focus will be living standards, and we will build on what we've done in the first year of this government. We've stabilised the economy, and that means interest rates have been cut now 4 times. And for anybody watching this on a mortgage, that makes a huge difference on a monthly basis to how much they pay. In the first year, we've raised wages as well, both in the private sector plus the minimum wage, which means people have got a bit more money coming into their pocket. And so at this stage, that'll all be set out in the budget, but the focus will very much be on living standards and making sure people feel better off. Some of the figures that have been put out are not figures that I recognise, but the budget won't be until later in the year, and that's why we'll have the forecast then, and we'll set out our plans. What's really important is that I'm very clear about our focus, which will be on living standards and making sure that people feel better off, partly because more money is coming into their pocket in the first place through better wages, and partly because we're bearing down on costs like mortgages and other costs to everyday families.
Can you spot the new phrase?
Is this the living standards idea?
No, it's everyday families.
Oh, everyday family.
What's an everyday family?
Oh, it's so mindless that it actually went in one ear and out the other for me.
Well, but the first time we played that out the first time we played that out this morning, I was trying to sort of count the seconds, because he literally says nothing. He's able to speak for about a minute and a bit while making no sense at all and saying nothing at all.
Yeah, I must admit, I think I nodded off at one point as he was speaking there. But there is a real consequence to all this, which is that you don't trust anything that he says.
Right.
He comes out and makes speeches. Do you remember the Island of Strangers speech from a few months ago? It was actually very good in parts, right? He said the bit that no left-wing leader has said for a long time, which is, you know, huge amounts of mass migration and not enriching British culture, or not having the state trying to push British culture, have turned us in to an island of strangers.
Yeah.
Anyone that's ever visited London, let alone lives here, will know that's true here, as it is of many cities.
Yeah.
He comes out a few weeks later saying, oh, yeah, I didn't actually really read the speech until I gave it, and I regret that now.
Yeah, and he wished he'd never said it. And it's the only thing he's ever said that actually was any good, to be fair.
Yeah. Absolutely right. And as a politician, you're not supposed to admit that you don't write your own speeches, let alone that you don't even read them before delivering them. I mean, it would explain the very wooden delivery of the speeches that he used. But how do you even compete against someone like this, who's just such a kind of closed off unit? He doesn't dream, doesn't read, all the rest of it. So how is it that we're supposed to expect to believe anything he says when he's like, oh, I'm probably maybe not any more taxes? We definitely know that taxes are going up, because that's all socialists know how to do. They only have one lever. It's more state control, more immiseration of the people that live here by stealing more of their hard-earned money to give it increasingly to foreigners who come here not to work. How are we supposed to believe anything this man says? Yeah,
exactly right. And all that you get, the message is you know, we inherited this terrible situation. Well, even if it was true, which it isn't, that they inherited a £22 billion black hole, well, who's to blame for the amount that they've now put on to make it up to 50, you know, which is by any measure another 28 billion. Surely that must be their fault then.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. Look, the fundamentals of all this are that they came in, and actually Rachel Reeves said when she was in opposition, we're not going to do that naughty thing that new governments do, where I promise not to do anything now, and then get into government and say, oh, blimey, the books are much worse than I actually thought they were going to be. We'll have to be even worse. And then she goes and does the thing she promised not to do, talking the country down, inventing this black hole. In the process, by the way, creating it because she's scared off huge amounts of investment. Loads of rich people and not rich people, frankly, are emigrating and leaving to other places where the streets are safer and the taxes are lower. And then what? More tax. And we know that tax doesn't lead to prosperity. Winston Churchill said that trying to tax your way to prosperity is like a man standing in a bucket and trying to pull himself up by the handle.
Exactly right. Well, just as you mentioned, Rachel Reeves, we've got a little montage for you here on how she's not going to come back for taxes.
I'm really clear. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes. And that is why, at this budget, we did wipe the slate clean.
What the budget in October did was draw a line under the economic and financial mismanagement of the Conservative government. I've now put our public finances in order, so never again will I have to do a budget like I did in October.
But you
our
were
public
slightly
finances
more...
are now on a firm footing. We have now set the public spending envelope for this Parliament. We don't need to come back and ask for more. We've now set that. We're going to do a zero-based review to make sure we get value for money for every pound that taxpayers' money spent. In that budget, I've tried to fix the foundations and wipe the slate clean.
But it's so 1.3% year after next, for example. And that implies, doesn't it, that you're going to have to come back and ask for yet more tax rises?
Absolutely not. We have now set the envelope of spending for this Parliament and we're going to live within our means.
Yeah, we're going to live within our means. I think they've shredded that particular envelope. I'm not quite sure what's happened to it. There's another one here from Pat McFadden, who said on the 4th of June of last year, Rishi Sunak's claims about Labour and tax are categorically untrue. Labour will not put up taxes on working people. They're just a collection of liars, aren't they?
Yeah, well, maybe they won't put them up on working people. What about the everyday families? I think if you're listening and you're a non-everyday family, then watch out because you're definitely getting stung for a big tax hike. It's the fact that she can't speak outside of platitudes as well, right? We've drawn a line under this, the spending envelope. You know, Mike, you're a good writer. When you write stuff, you abide by some of George Orwell's rules for writing and don't use boring, tired old cliches.
Right.
It's all these people can think in the 14 years that they were in opposition, felt like none of them have ever read a single book. None of them have ever thought about a single novel or new idea. It's always, you know, if it moves, tax it. If it doesn't move, subsidize it. Right? And then if it still doesn't move, nationalize it and then make it even worse.
Yes.
It's really depressing when you see what other countries are now getting to do. And in the United States of America, the exciting things they're doing, sealing
Well, look
off
at
the border,
we just saw a £600 billion investment from Apple, who have come back from China. You know, the CEO was standing with Trump yesterday. 600 billion quid, just one company.
Yeah, it's absolutely extraordinary what can be done. And actually, some of the stuff the Trump administration is doing, you would think would be grist for a Labour Party mill, right? Reindustrializing, onshoring jobs again, all this kind of stuff. But we're doing the opposite. We're even stopping farmers from growing food in England so that you can plaster it with the solar panels I know you're going to talk about later. And that's probably why they're putting the farmers out of work, to have more space for the solar panels, whilst we're not generating electricity in all sorts of other ways. The reason that this matters, and that I think the next election that comes is probably so existential, I think we've only got one shot left to turn some of this around. If you look at the scale of debt that Britain has, we now spend a huge amount, something like £115 billion every year, just to service the debt that we've got. And that is a number that's growing every time. We're not paying down that debt. That's just to keep running to stand still. £115 billion a year. It's about the third biggest line item after welfare and pensions and then the NHS. And that's growing every year. And as that grows and we owe more and more money, the market is less likely to borrow, to lend us any more of it. And it means less money that you've got to spend. on defence as the world gets more dangerous, on education as Labour wrecks that, on the NHS as they fail to get to grips with that. At some point, the music will stop and that we will become uninvestable, just at the time when Labour have scared all the rich people away. Everybody else is too dejected to bother working because they haven't raised those tax thresholds, and many millions more people are paying higher rates of tax than they were ever supposed to. And we've still got these numpties in charge for a few more years. That is a really cruel state to leave the country in for whichever government comes along next.
Absolutely.
To try and fix it.
And you can be sure when the music stops, there won't be any chairs either, because they'll have sold all of those off for firewood to keep the home fires burning, for heaven's sake. James, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Brilliant. James Price, former government